entire Connecticut college community, I want to welcome you to today's 103rd commencement ceremonies. Dean of Institutional Equity and Inclusion, John McKnight, will begin our celebration today by delivering our land acknowledgement, which will be followed with a call to community. After this invocation, we will all join together in singing America the Beautiful. You will find the words on page 23 of your program. And finally, to make this ceremony as respectful as possible in this beautiful place, we ask you to silence your cell phones. I now ask Dean John McKnight to come forward to initiate our program.
I would like to take a moment on behalf of the college to acknowledge the land we currently occupy and to honor the native peoples who were its first inhabitants. Specifically, we honor the Mashantucket Pequots, Eastern Pequots, Mohegans, and other tribal nations who are indigenous to Namion, now called New London, and the land surrounding coastal Algonquin, also known as the Long Island Sound region. We acknowledge that indigenous peoples have cared for this land over many generations and know that they endured suffering and violence through the historical period of settler colonialism. Today we strive to tell and retell the complete stories, to repair the harm, and to live together as neighbors in this region. Having acknowledged the land, I would like to invite us into communion with one another. I will offer an adaptation of a prayer by the American theologian Walter Brueggemann from his volume entitled Prayers for a Privileged People. Unto whom all hearts are open, we often rush to the next phrase, but now we linger there. We ponder our hearts, our deepest feelings of love and devotion, our closest organ of vitality, our place of deep decision-making, our instrument of being fully ourselves. Our hearts that throb for contact beyond ourselves. Our hearts are open. They are not always open by our choice, for we would like sometimes to close our hearts and our minds and our hands, but they are open because our hearts cannot resist steady care and address. Our hearts are open and made restless till they find rest outside ourselves. Today we ask for the mysterious, the majestic to happen with our hearts. Reclaim, renew, re-enliven, that we may leave one another's presence, transplanted, transformed, transposed, open and receptive, honest and undefensive, unafraid and committed. Let the pulse of our heart throb now. Our hearts are open to one another yet again. Thank you, and may I now ask you all to continue standing and rise for the singing of America the Beautiful. Leading us today will be Megan Aldrich from the class of 2021.
Just sky. Are you sure? Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for
so much, Megan. Everyone may be seated, and may we give a hand to the awesome New London Big Band. First time playing at a commencement at Connecticut College. Let it not be the last. That's right, you can give it up again. Good afternoon and welcome, members of the Board of Trustees, distinguished guests, faculty, staff, and alumni colleagues, family members and friends, all who are joining us in person, and from afar. And most especially, every one of you who makes up the incomparable class of 2021. I cannot tell you how meaningful it is to stand here before you and to be able to declare today's exercises, the 103rd commencement of Connecticut College, officially open. What an honor, what a gift it is to be with you. Every graduation is momentous, but this year, honestly, it feels like a miracle. And so I just have to pause and acknowledge the gratitude I feel right now. Gratitude for parents and guardians who entrusted us with loved ones during a very uncertain time. Gratitude for stunning faculty and staff who worked harder than ever in a pandemic to fulfill our educational mission. Gratitude for students who showed strength and resilience and compassion as you pursued your goals while managing to keep a virus off our campus. Gratitude for every single person who, through months of planning and replanning, made it possible for us to gather safely today on this beautiful spot. Dean McKnight acknowledged the land as we began this ceremony. And I have to say, the green we are now sitting on and the trees that surround us truly deserve our thanks. This generous expanse of open space is, after all, what sustained us through a year when being outside was the safest way to come together. The old oaks and maples and beeches and larches were welcome companions, providing shade and solace, and yes, wisdom. I've been reflecting a lot lately on the wisdom of trees. That's probably because I just finished reading an amazing book, Finding the Mother Tree, by the Canadian ecologist Suzanne Simard, about the wisdom of the forest. And it has got me thinking in new ways about those elders who are right here in our midst. If you look at archival photos, you can see that our college was essentially built on a pasture. A photo from 1930, 15 years after the college opened, reveals the southern area of the campus, where we are now, as a huge open space with virtually no vegetation and just 4 buildings: Blaustein to the north, Knowlton to the west, and New London and Fanning Hall to the east. That's it. Cows are grazing in the field where we now play ultimate frisbee. The larches at the Ad Astra Garden are specks. The giant copper beech at the north corner of Knowlton barely reaches the roof. That means those spectacular specimens have been rooted here since before my own mother was born. It's hard not to think of them now as mother trees. We have a mother tree, too, at the center of the seal you see on the cover of your program, modeled perhaps on the gorgeous tulip poplar, Liriodendron tulipifera, that greets you as you drive through the front entrance. The encircling line of Latin is from the first psalm, Tamquam lignum quod plantatum est, and it refers to a tree planted by a river, one that will bring forth fruit in its season. The reference certainly resonates as a metaphor for education and growth, but we could also probably take it more literally, because if you pay closer attention to our history, you will see that one of the important things this college was doing in the early years was, in fact, planting trees, lots of them, in order to return land once cleared for farming to a thriving habitat for native species. That project starts exactly 90 years ago, in 1931, with the establishment of the Connecticut College Arboretum. You may know that I often like giving one last history lesson on this last day of your Connecticut College education. So today I'm going to take a moment to tell the story of our Arboretum before returning to Suzanne Simard in order to reflect on the wisdom of trees and what that means for you and your life beyond Connecticut College. It was President Catherine Blunt who had the idea in 1931 to transform a 64-acre tract of donated land west of William Street into an arboretum. She hired an inaugural director and retained a prominent New York landscape architect to design the space. The topography included granite outcroppings, sloping valleys, a pine plantation, a small man-made pond, and as a centerpiece, a magnificent grove of century-old hemlocks. By 1936, the college had raised funds to create a new front entrance, turn the pond into a lake, landscape an amphitheater, and build a lodge, largely with labor supplied by the Works Progress Administration. Most important, the new director established a plant collection to fulfill the Arboretum's mission of preserving and propagating native species in Connecticut. Within a few years, the nurseries boasted thousands of specimens. This gets us to 1938, the year of the surprise hurricane that destroyed so much of southern New England. Palmer Auditorium, under construction at the time, as it is now, took a beating along with much of the campus landscape. But the storm was death to that noble grove of hemlocks, with over 120 trees uprooted or killed from salt damage. Students and faculty spent the next years studying the fallen giants, some with roots tracing back to the 18th century. Then in 1944, the first director departed, and a Harvard-trained plant morphologist named Richard Goodwin was hired as successor. Goodwin became the ultimate steward, elevating the stature of the Arboretum while also using his position and the land as a bulwark against urban encroachment. During his impressive 30-year tenure, he expanded the land holdings to 450 acres, brought on William Nearing as an ambitious research partner, created the first liberal arts environmental studies program in the country, and helped to found the Nature Conservancy. One of Goodwin's first jobs, though, was to plant trees. Shortly after he arrived, he started an 8-year reforestation project, maybe to make up for the loss of those forsaken hemlocks, but mostly to rehabilitate the cultivated land. 10,000 evergreen seedlings were planted between 1945 and 1953. And you know what happened next. In the decades that followed, a mature, diverse, mixed wood forest has grown up. There is so much wisdom in that reforestation. And I don't just mean the more than 60 years of longitudinal research that has been undertaken by students and faculty, or the more than 12,000 tons of CO2 that have by now been removed from the atmosphere. I'm thinking of the wisdom shared by the trees themselves. And here's where I want to return to Suzanne Simard. Her remarkable book, Finding the Mother Tree, reads like a whodunit of the forest, chronicling more than 30 years of her own research focused on the mystery of how trees, especially elders, exchange knowledge to heal, nourish, and sustain their community. The mystery, it turns out, lies just beneath our feet, in a vast communication network of mycorrhizal fungi, entwining roots and connecting trees in a mutually beneficial exchange. But Simard's decades of experimental data also show something more. The same mycorrhizae that can help a Douglas fir can also support the flourishing of paper birch, the two sharing resources on the same network. Flourishing requires diversity, and that's why she says policies focused on clear cutting and monoculture replanting are doomed to fail. The tree species aren't competing, they're collaborating. Older helping younger, hardwood helping evergreen, through an underground network that allows them to take and give what they need. The roots didn't thrive when they grew alone, she wrote, speaking of her research. The trees needed one another. That research eventually leads Simard toward the concept of the mother tree, the elder at the center of the network, helping to ensure the growth of seedlings below, creating the condition for the sustainability of the whole forest. To me, it sounds like the ideal we sometimes like to call full participation, giving individuals the means to reach their potential and flourish so they, in turn, can contribute to the flourishing of others. It's this reciprocity that defines the wisdom of the forest. And I have to admit, knowing what I know now about the underground network, I can no longer look at our arboretum or our campus in the same way. Of course, I did not have to read a book by an ecologist from Western Canada to learn all this. Our own Rachel Spicer, chair of the botany department, is an internationally known specialist in woody plants. Chad Jones has done compelling longitudinal research on forest regeneration and invasive species. Manuel Lizarralde has thought deeply about the human ecology of rainforests. And I'm certain that Esteban Melendez, from your great class of 2021, would be more than happy if given half a chance to spend whatever time necessary to unpack with me the secrets of mycorrhizae. There's one more person, too, who I believe could have explained it all. Hans Horstmartz, to whom we will award a posthumous degree at this commencement. And it's not just because of the years of research he did here with Professor Jones in our Arboretum. It's also because, as so many people know, Hans was uncannily sensitive to the ecology of communities and the connectedness of things. A beautiful thing happened, in fact, on Arbor Day, April 30th, when we gathered in the Arboretum to remember his spirit. Teachers and friends invoked him in touching tributes, and a mischievous wind kicked up, not exactly disrupting the proceedings, but injecting a puckish energy that was pure Hans, as if to remind us that the trees had other work to do. They were having their moment on his behalf. I will admit I wanted to talk about trees today because of Hans. But there are at least two other lessons about the wisdom of trees that I believe valuable for all you soon-to-be graduates. The first relates to Suzanne Simard herself. She was your age, after all, just out of college, when she had an important insight about why reforestation projects were failing. The trees were telling her something about collaboration, and she felt compelled to follow it through. And while she did the research and presented the data, the policymakers scoffed. But she didn't quit. She just worked harder, and eventually she ended up changing the way the government managed the land. So that's lesson number one. Don't be afraid to speak what you believe. And don't stop when people push back. Just push harder. Keep doing your research and building your allies, because your seed of an idea could just be the next breakthrough. And there can be no breakthrough if you're not willing to plant something. The second lesson has to do with what the trees were telling her. And this is ultimately a lesson about community. As Simard reminds us, ecosystems are so similar to human societies. They're built on relationships. The stronger those relationships are, the more resilient the system. If there is one thing we learned from the past 15 months, it is the power of the complex ecosystem that is the residential experience. The strength we draw from living and working together in community. So that's lesson number two. Don't ever take that wisdom for granted. Your job now is not to make it on your own, but to build a new forest by remembering and reproducing the same network of connections that have sustained you here, like a mother tree. The 10,000 evergreen seedlings planted by Richard Goodwin in the 1940s and 50s are now the elders, sustaining the wisdom of our arboretum. Here is Simard again. She says, seedlings are intermediate nodes between distant mother trees that eventually become mothers themselves. This unbroken line between the old and the young, the links between generations, as with all living things, is the legacy of the forest, the roots of our survival. On each of your chairs today is a white pine seedling, a gift given to every graduating class by a generous alumna in a tradition that goes back 3 decades. By now, equivalent to 10,000 evergreens. It is given as a physical reminder of both the wisdom you are taking from this place and the roots of your resilience. A way for you, like a mother tree, to build a new forest. Class of 2021, we love you. We are proud of you. We know you will carry the wisdom of this place into the world to promote the flourishing of others. Thank you for planting your talent, your passion, and your conviction inside this very special community to make it a better place. We wish you much happiness and success in your life after Connecticut College, and we look forward to seeing you here often and welcoming you home. Thank you very much. And now we have arrived at the part of our program where we hear directly from a member of the class of 2021. Our tradition at Connecticut College is to select the senior orator through a competitive nomination process open to the entire senior class. Among an impressive group of nominees, the student you are about to hear today stood out for his unique perspective on what it means to live and lead through historic challenges. He is a double major in film studies and philosophy, and a scholar in the Tour Cummings Center for International Studies and the Liberal Arts, with a special focus on the French New Wave cinema. He is known as a deep thinker who speaks several languages, who loves the power of words, and who has published his own poetry in Cadenza, the college's literary arts magazine. He is also a doer, a person of action, who has served the college in many leadership roles, as sophomore class president, as co-chair of the Student Activities Council, as business manager for the College Voice, as a tour guide for the Office of Admission, as a staff member of the Residential Education and Learning staff, and as a passionate farmer, awed by the cycle of life playing out each day in the Sprout Garden. In the past year, he worked as an intern for a startup gaming company called Team Basilisk, launched by Connecticut College alumnus Christopher Beautour, class of 2007. And after graduation, he will be continuing that engagement as a full-time employee. So won't you join me in welcoming the 2021 senior class orator, Amir Kuluk.
Class of 2021, esteemed faculty, dedicated staff, loving parents and families, friends. It is a great honor to be here before you today and to welcome you to Connecticut College's 103rd commencement. For those of you who could not be here today and who are watching online, thank you for tuning in on this important day. For my mother and grandmother who are watching live from Turkey, sizi çok seviyorum ve yanaklarınızdan öpüyorum. These past 2 years have been filled with challenges of global proportions, a pandemic, an economic recession, and so many other issues slowing our pursuit for a better world. The rise in gun violence and hate against Asian people, Black people, and immigrants. All these are reminders of the fragile world we live in. Some would say that we've been living through multiple pandemics simultaneously. And there were challenges closer to home. Many of us lost a loved one to COVID-19 or know someone who did. If we think back to last year at this time, most of us were isolated in our bedrooms, trying to fulfill our major requirements, reworking our plans for the summer, while separated from our communities to keep them safe. For myself personally, I faced the uncertainty of being sent back home. I remember many of my American friends asking what I was going to do. Could I even study from Istanbul, Turkey? Little did I know that I would end up staying on this campus without a break for the next 15 months. All of us made sacrifices, uncertain how these sacrifices would affect our future. We experienced longing for our past, for a time where we could live together with less than 6 feet between us, for a world that felt less chaotic and uncertain. And in the midst of all this, we lost our dear friend, Hans. Whether it was his optimism and friendly spirit that shone brightly throughout campus and brightest in the Sprout Garden, or his desire always to make the world a better place by doing something as small as fixing a swing set behind Harkness Chapel, or as large as addressing climate change, he was a person who radiated the warmth of community and gave us all a sense of hope for the future. These were the not insignificant challenges and sacrifices we faced together as a class. And, like me, I'm sure there were times when you felt a little bit lost. It was in those moments that I often found myself turning to a special poem by one of my favorite Turkish poets, Nazım Hikmet. The poem is called On Living, and I wanted to share some of it with you today. It begins, living is no joke. You must live with great seriousness. Like a squirrel, for example. I mean, expecting nothing except and beyond living. I mean, living must be your whole occupation. That first line, living is no joke, turned into my personal motto as I decided to adapt to what life had become and to get busy. I got busy building a half-acre farm next to the Sprout Garden. I got busy working for a Khan alumnus to build a startup company. I got busy putting the liberal arts into action, and so did you. You got busy by making music, enrolling in summer classes, creating workout challenges. You got busy supporting communities in need, listening to voices that are not always heard, educating yourself about the history and sociopolitical dynamics of this country. It is easy enough to want to relive a specific joyous moment, like jumping to Lovely the Band at Floralia, or cheering on the club hockey team as they play against the Coast Guard. But it is just as easy to think about and admire all the amazing things we were able to do on a daily basis. Whether it was choreographing dance routines, creating costumes for a play, hosting an open mic night, publishing a newspaper, practicing a cappella, coding a video game, representing con through athletics, all while attending classes, we have pushed through against all odds. On one of the last stanzas of his poem, Hikmet goes on to say, "We'll still live with the outside, with its people and animals, struggle and wind. I mean, with the outside, beyond the walls. I mean, however and wherever we are, we must live as if we will never die." To get to this moment today, it certainly seemed like we had to live by this ideal, and we have to keep doing so. That means getting busy in the present to make the world we want now. This is the only way we can remain hopeful for the future. Yes, it is time for us to leave this campus, but we will not be entering the world unprepared. Our experiences over the past 4 years, and especially the past 2, have set us up well for the rich and beautiful challenges ahead. I encourage you to stay adaptable, informed, and forever open to growth. Seize this life with your whole heart, as you've done throughout your time at Connecticut College, and never forget that living is no joke. Thank you, and congratulations, class of 2021. And now, please welcome Dean of the Faculty, Jeffrey Cole.
Thank you, Amir. I am very pleased to be here today to present the Oakes and Louise Ames Prize for 2021. The Oakes and Louise Ames Prize is named for the late President Emeritus Oakes Ames and his wife, Louise Ames. It is given to a graduating senior who has completed this year's most outstanding honors study. The prize is offered by the trustees in recognition of the quality of academic achievement that Oakes and Louise Ames fostered in their 14 years of service to Connecticut College. This year's Ames Prize is awarded to Justin Nawafor. Justin, will you please come forward? Let's hear it for him. Justin is an American Chemical Society certified major in chemistry with a double minor in mathematics and physics. He is receiving the Ames Prize for his thesis, Why are glycines 31, 33, and 35 highly conserved in all fluorescent proteins? Justin's thesis specifically examined the role of the glycines that are conserved in more than 90% of organisms with fluorescent proteins, and investigates why these glycines are found in the same locations in such diverse organisms as jellyfish, corals, and sea squirts. He used computational methods to determine the structural consequences to changing these glycines into larger, less flexible amino acids, running 12 simulations with 2 other undergraduate researchers, generating thousands of structures. His experimental analysis suggests that these 3 glycines play a crucial role in the folding pathway of fluorescent proteins. Justin's thesis is a significant and sophisticated study of a novel question that impacts the general understanding of fluorescent proteins at the chemical level. There is great interest in how these important proteins function, and this work will soon be submitted for publication in a peer-reviewed publication with Justin as the first author. Justin's thesis advisor, Mark Zimmer, the G&C Temple 65 professor of chemistry, had this to say about his student. Having taught at Conn for 30 years and having advised more than 80 research students, I can attest that Justin has acquired the highest level of knowledge and skill in computational chemistry of any student I have ever known. Justin, for your outstanding scholarship, I am pleased to present you with the 2021 Oakes and Louise Ames Prize. I now invite Jefferson Singer, Dean of the College, to come forward and present the Anna Lord Strauss Medal.
Anna Lord Strauss was a remarkable woman who embodied the idea of service in her role as national president of the League of Women Voters. In her 5 presidential appointments to national and international committees and missions, and in her devotion to Connecticut College as a trustee for the extraordinary term of 34 years. The medal is presented in her honor to the graduating senior who has done outstanding work in public or community service, including service to the college. This year's recipient, like Strauss herself, is an exceptional leader, scholar, and change maker. Grace Amato completed 2 majors, one in gender, sexuality, and intersexuality studies, and the other in Latin American studies, while also serving as a scholar and fellow in the Holleran Center for Community Action and Public Policy. During her time at Connecticut College, she demonstrated a deep commitment to food justice, racial equity, LGBTQIA+ equity, advocacy and inclusion, gender-based violence prevention, and immigrants' rights. These commitments are reflected in her work both on campus and in the broader community. She served as a tutor at the Janet S. York Correctional Institution in Niantic, and collaboratively managed a book drive to raise money and collect books for York's school library. At the nexus between scholarship and community action, she completed internships with Fresh New London and the Immigrant Advocacy and Support Center to hone her Spanish language, advocacy, and leadership skills. Grace's many community contributions include serving as an assistant librarian with the New London Public Library and as an administrative assistant with Hearing Youth Voices, a New London-based organization focused on youth activism and empowerment. On campus, she made significant contributions to the Connecticut College community as a leader in sexual violence prevention efforts and served as a student member of the Search Committee for the Associate Dean of the Institutional Equity and Inclusion. Grace Amato, for your exemplary work as a citizen and a scholar, I am pleased to present you with the 2021 Anna Lord Strauss Medal. Please come forward.
Can we congratulate these awesome students one more time? And now I'm going to ask Fritz Foltz, Chair of the Board of Trustees and a member of the class of 1982, to join me at the podium. This is a surprise. Fritz does not know that this is happening. Fritz, the Connecticut College Medal was created in 1969 to mark the 50th anniversary of the college's first commencement. It's the highest honor that can be conferred on an individual for accomplishments and service that enhance the college's reputation and nourish its growth. Fritz Foltz, with your profound commitment to the liberal arts, with quiet strength and equanimity, you have ably supported your alma mater through 9 years of distinguished service to the Connecticut College Board of Trustees, from your start in 2012 to the last 3 years of serving as chair. After graduating from Connecticut College in 1982, you embarked on a highly successful career in global investment, becoming known for your expertise in the application of systems dynamics, complexity economics, and multiplayer game theory to analyze global capital markets. This work has brought you to the highest offices, including the White House, where you participated in a Washington roundtable convened by President Barack Obama. Under your leadership, Connecticut College advanced key priorities of our strategic plan, including the opening of the new Hale Center for Career Development, the expansion of our signature academic resource center, the adoption of a comprehensive action plan for equity and inclusion, and the launch of the Agnes Gunn Class of 1960 Dialogue Project. You have also seen the college advance the most ambitious campaign in college history. During your tenure on the board, you contributed to several committees and served as chair of finance. But I will always be grateful for the particular work you did in 2013 on the Presidential Search Committee and for your leadership as you helped me transition into my new role at Connecticut College. Most significantly, you have led this college with a steady hand and a compassionate spirit during a global pandemic, ensuring that the institution would remain on stable footing during a period of profound change for higher education, the country, and the world. In every way, you have contributed to the success of Connecticut College, burnishing its reputation as a leader in purpose-driven, integrative, equity-minded education. In recognition of your exemplary stewardship of the college's mission, and in gratitude to your unwavering support during the most significant public health crisis this country has experienced in a century, we are proud to confer on you the Connecticut College Medal as you prepare to retire from the board in June. And now I need to ask you to help me in the conferring of the honorary degree.
I ask Ethan Brown to come forward. Ethan Brown, your transformative contributions to the problem of climate change speak to the ideals of Connecticut College and its long history of environmental stewardship and putting the liberal arts into action. You graduated from Connecticut College in 1994 with a Bachelor of Arts in History and Government before receiving your MBA from Columbia University and a Master of Public Policy from the University of Maryland. Your professional career began in the alternative energy field, where you had a revelation about the environmental impact of livestock production, an insight that led you to imagine an alternative meat industry. With support from Bill Gates and others, you founded Beyond Meat in 2009 with a revolutionary idea that muscle could be synthesized from plant-based proteins in order to provide an environmentally responsible food supply with the capacity both to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and decrease land and water use. And in 2019, you proved that profitability and social responsibility are not mutually exclusive when Beyond Meat saw the best first-day initial public offering of any major American company in decades. Your distinguished record of environmental leadership is evident in a long list of other accomplishments. You created a Center for Fuel Reformation. You've led leadership positions in the renewable energy industry, including as vice chairman of the board at the National Hydrogen Association and secretary of the U.S. Fuel Cell Council. The Aspen Institute named you a Henry Crown Fellow, a distinction reserved for young entrepreneurs that demonstrate leadership driven by a spirit of community. In 2018, you received the United Nations' highest environmental recognition, the Champion of the Earth Award. For your singular commitment to excellence, innovation, and sustainability, the college is proud to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
We're not done yet. Ethan Brown, in recognition of your many achievements and by the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees and pursuant to their vote, I hereby confer on you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, with all the attendant rights, privileges, and responsibilities. And we will now place the doctoral hood over your very tall head.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's a terrific honor to be here. I had an absolutely wonderful experience here at Connecticut College. So first and foremost, where's Justin? Where's Justin, the guy that just came up? Justin, you got a job at Beyond Meat. I'm very interested to hear about these Larson proteins. And I understand you're going to Hopkins. I'll tell you what, I grew up in D.C. and Maryland, and I can tell you Hopkins is cool, but L.A. is a lot cooler. Come on out, my friend. All right, thank you, Catherine, very much. Thank you to the Board of Trustees for the opportunity to address the Connecticut College community today. Congratulations again to the class of 2021. You've adapted and stayed focused during a very difficult period, and my hat's off to you, not literally. You've received a truly first-rate liberal arts education at Connecticut College. I remember my courses here, from history to government to philosophy to economics, biology and ecology, and that nagging feeling that I should actually be attending them. And how quickly that feeling went away on a nice spring day like today. Long live Feralia, my friends. I really appreciate this honorary degree, but I'd give it back for just one more. There are so many qualities that recommend Connecticut College, including that if you graduated from here and live in California as I do, and tell folks you played basketball at Conn College, at least half of them will think you're talking about UConn. You can correct them if you'd like. So much of what I work on today, I was able to explore here, given the school's unwavering belief in a broad and deep liberal arts education. Words, teachings, and readings of Vogel, Forrester, Burlingame, Green, Fraser, Nearing, Kermsey, and other professors are with me today. It is great to be back at our college on the Hill. I'm going to first tell you how I wrestled with the question that will come to define my life and then my work. I do so not to convince you of my answer, but rather to ask you to seek your own personal truth as a foundation for your life. Second, I will offer some key learnings that have helped me in my life. Some came easier to me than others. In this advice, I hope to give you the benefit of my struggles and fulfillment so that you might have more fulfillment and less struggles. I grew up a lot like you and your parents in a world where hierarchy and separateness explain the relationship to and among life on Earth. The separation and ranking of life is so pervasive that our indoctrination in it, as a natural order of things, is hardly noticeable. Like that rug in your parents' home, it's just there as we grow up, and we give little thought to its origin. The great chain of being, rooted in ancient Greek philosophy and further throughout the Middle Ages, is as good as any place to start. Placing humans over other animal life, this general idea makes an enduring appearance in Dominion, in the book of Genesis. Not content with this elevated status of the humans over the rest of life on Earth, throughout history we've thought to further segment human life, whether in concepts of chosenness within religions of the world, including the Christian religion, of which is my faith, Jewish, Muslim, and others, or on the basis of race, gender, sexual preference, class, so on, and such like. The Otherness Project, the description I use to describe this history of hierarchy and separation, our history, stands in stark contrast to the biological footing of life. Growing up and even now, I struggled with a sense of brotherhood that I feel with life surrounding me and the conveniences and practices of my daily life. I grew up in a city divided by the color of skin and the distribution of income, and I live in one now. I cherished the animals in my home, but ate those I didn't see or hear, perhaps hoping at some mysterious difference, say hoof to paw, or mere distance. The latter somehow did not feel pain or have an emotional life. My efforts to address inconsistencies between inner thoughts and feelings and my external actions were themselves inconsistent. As a child, I was part of a generation, as Dr. King dreamed of, that played hand in hand across race, as if it had always been that way. This through the conscious work of progressive educators and parents. Yet I actively benefited from the educational opportunities afforded me, while these same opportunities were, in the main, not made available to my brothers and sisters of a different complexion. As I got older, I stopped eating certain types of animals, namely farmed animals, intermittently and then for good. The interaction with the animals on our farm outside the city made it clear what science would later reveal to me. Made from the same elemental material as us, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and so on, using sensory and nervous systems that we once shared. And with the same DNA coding systems, animals were not machines, but were sentient beings. Simultaneously an early and contemporary version of me. Yet I still wore their skin. And I enjoyed fishing, hoping that somehow the nervous systems of the pickerel, trout, and mackerel that I caught were sufficiently different than the ancient aquatic life who broke the waterline and crawled to shore, becoming the terrestrial animals that I had decided not to eat. The lines were blurry in my mind. It turns out that lines are blurred, and this is the point. Later, the philosopher James Rachels helped me see why this is, noting that Darwin correctly observed that there are not absolute, but rather degrees of difference among species, including us. Rachel summarized that Darwin stressed of animals that in an important sense, their nervous systems, their behaviors, their cries are our nervous systems, are our behaviors and our cries, with only a little modification. This takes me to a pickerel and a still summer morning. My father and I used to take a canoe early to a pond near our farm and watch the mist clear, beavers retire for the morning and throw lines in. The entrance to the pond is an unmarked dirt road. I rarely saw another person. This particular summer, I was in the middle of a teenage growth spurt. Long and bony like the pickerel I pulled from the water, I was short on confidence. I was mostly at the time releasing the fish, but not always. On this particular day, as I was fishing from a small wooden bridge at the pond's modest dam, a couple happened to be embarking in a boat. Seeing that I was releasing the fish, the man said they'd take him if I didn't want him. Anxiety set in. Not yet a man myself, and fearing that I'd be viewed as soft or sentimental, I agreed and handed the fish over. As is done, he ran a stick through the gill to carry the pickerel and walked toward his truck. I didn't know at the time that the fish had A delta and C fibers in his cranial nerves, and that, like ours, he signaled pain. Nor did I know he had the genetic underpinnings to sprout fingers, but instead expressed fins for obvious reasons. Or that hosting more cell cones in his optical system, and he could see colors more vividly than I could. But as I watched him struggle, twist, and fight, I knew one thing with certainty. I would do the same to preserve my life. My discomfort must have been obvious. The man said if I'd rather put the pickerel back, I could have him. I nervously said yes. After freeing him from the stick, I quickly returned his exhausted body to the warm surface water, where he tried to find his balance as he filled his circulation with oxygen. He gathered himself and finally darted away. I wouldn't tell you that this experience changed me on the spot. It didn't. As with innovation and claims of sudden insight, the story of sudden revelation is often oversold. I was troubled by the experience, but fumbled forward with ambiguity. Sense that what I've learned thus far about the world in my 15 years was not how I felt about the world. As I matured, including on this campus, I became less convinced of the world as simply as it is, and more committed to the idea that the world is as we make it, for better or worse. If the Otherness Project insisted on a narrow slice of life when deciding who matters, I searched for a broader border. Ultimately, I found resonance in the writing of Albert Schweitzer. The physician, theologian, and winner of the Nobel Peace Prize was admired by my grandfather, a congregational minister who lived and practiced here in Connecticut, as well as being of great interest to my father. So I was familiar with him. In fact, a few years ago, in my father's office in her house in the Maine woods, I was thumbing through my grandfather's copy of Schweitzer's Out of My Life and Thought. I found, underlined, the very phrase that I'd finally come to earlier in my life as I searched for answers: reverence for life. There, bookmarked and penciled by his hand, my grandfather, long since passed, was sharing it with me in the event I had missed Schweitzer's words. I am life that wills to live in the midst of life that wills to live. Ethics thus consists in this, that I experience the necessity of practicing the same reverence of life toward all will to live as toward my own. In this broadening of the golden rule, Schweitzer saw a universal ethic. Seek to cherish, not check. Maintain, not destroy, life. These thoughts came to him on the Gui River in West Africa, and reached back into my childhood heart and gave it a coherent path of expression. Here was the ethic of a boundary that traced the biological, not cultural, circumference of life. It is, of course, a truly impossible ethic to adhere to fully in a practical sense. It is, however, a powerful North Star to tilt your sail toward as you live among one another and the rest of life on Earth. For years, I sought to apply this ethic with messy imprecision and inconsistency, in its most direct sense, only to my personal choices. As a professional, I felt safer in the world of clean energy, working to address climate change. I was advancing in my career. I had gotten married and had small children. The life I had set up made sense. I was ambitious and could see myself leading a major enterprise in the energy sector. And truth be told, there was a strong element of needing to prove myself. And there was fear. Not of failure, but of something stronger. How I might be perceived. At this point, the pioneers who blazed the path before me in the food world were chefs or hippies or both. I was neither, and I put a lot of work in a conventional career path. I was sensitive to bailing out to play in labs and kitchens. And you see, I like people and enjoy making them feel comfortable around me, and feared being seen as judgmental of those that I love, that my career would suddenly be about something so deeply ingrained in so many good things in our culture, about questioning something so deeply ingrained in so many good things in our culture, from hot dogs at ball games to the work of farmers I knew well, deeply respected, and still do. Yet the passage of time has a way of summoning our truth. I believed and believe in a world where the diversity of life, yes, ethnicity, gender, orientation, but also species, is to be maintained and checked, not checked and destroyed, to be maintained and cherished, not checked and destroyed. I was seeing way too much checking and destroying. As a child, my discomfort at the pond was with speaking my truth. As an adult, as time moved on, it became the opposite. I was not letting my life speak. I began to look at how to apply big science and technology and robust budgets, what I had seen in my career, to something altogether different than solar cells or fuel cells. The challenging of delivering meat to a growing global population without the animal. It turns out that the very feature that caused my childhood discomfort, the broad unity of life across species, was also the solution. I only needed to marinate long enough in the problem to see it. Reflecting the origin of life itself, basic materials and genetic code are shared not just among animals, but also between plants and animals. Once you see this fact, it's hard to unsee it. Just the other day, I was hiking above the Pacific coastline outside Los Angeles before work. From a distance, 10 feet or so ahead, I see what I think is an unremarkable collection of gray leaves scattered across the path. As I got closer, I realized it's in fact the feathers of a bird who had likely been taken down as prey. Why did my mind mislead me? In the dim light of dawn, I had seen a familiar pattern, bilateral symmetry. The design and size of the left side of the object matched that of the right, as leaves can do. This is of course the same as a feather, and hence my mistake. One of plant origin, the other of animal origin. Same coding system and common elemental materials. It is this unity across plants and animals that makes Beyond Meat possible. Animal muscle is, at a high level, a collection of amino acids, lipids, trace minerals, vitamins, all combined with water. All of these are also in plants. With technology, we no longer need to use the animal to consume plants and turn them into the meat that we love to eat. As I explored the ideas that ultimately became Beyond Meat, something happened. I came across research that made a compelling case that emissions from livestock was a greater contributor to greenhouse gases than fossil fuels for automotive use, the area where I'd spent so much of my career. With this, the animal meats served at the various clean energy and climate conferences I attended with colleagues started to take on a new significance for me. So you see, by bringing my whole self to my professional world, far from leaving in the field of climate, I came anew to it with an even more powerful solution. This was my journey. It need not be yours. I share it with you to reinforce the importance of the first of my 3 pieces of advice. This is a line from a song that I like. I hope it will resonate with you. You decide who to be, and then go be it. You decide who to be, and then go be it. Believe endlessly in yourself. If you let them, people, even entire institutions, can assign limiting beliefs to you, or sometimes equally debilitating, graft expectations onto your life. By your age, you are likely carrying a mix of both around with you. It can be heavy freight to carry forward, and with time will only become heavier. How do you shed this weight? Do the difficult and probing work of finding what's in your heart, and allow your mind and your life to serve it. Doing so connects you to a life force that is within you and can give you remarkable strength to overcome challenges. Second piece, face your fears early and often. Study and fight them. If you are anything like me, you will defeat some, and others you won't. But at least you know them as fears, where they come from, what motivates and feeds them. And in doing battle, versus letting them unconsciously influence you, you've made progress. Most of all, I want you to really hear this. Do not fear failure. When you fail, which you will, do 2 things. 1, look inward with that middle of the night in the bathroom mirror honesty and ask, what could I have done differently? Your nervous system is ready to listen, and the answers can inform habits and judgment for years to follow. 2, stay in forward motion. I have failed multiple times in my life, including on this campus. I came here so excited to play in the NESCAC. I never visited the campus. And the only staff or faculty I had spoken to was the basketball coach. Yet upon arrival, I experienced a cascading series of injuries, mostly to my knee, that had me on crutches for long stretches each season, and ultimately forced me to the sideline for good. But I stayed in forward motion, and I can't help but think that this challenge had something to do with me finding the corner desk in the chapel library, in the basement of the chapel library, and with me leaving here a far more serious student than when I arrived. My third piece of advice, pitch a big tent. Despite my own journey, I count among my close advisors and friends, avid anglers and hunters. The vast majority of my friends and family consume animal meat. I love, cherish, and respect them deeply. Celebrate your friends and loved ones for who they are, not how similar or conforming they are to you. In closing, I want to share a quote that my father, to whom I am indebted for a lifetime of encouraging me to peer behind the curtain and seek to understand the world for myself, shared from a gift he gave me on my 21st birthday before I returned here to London in the fall. The light which puts out our eyes is darkness to us. Only the day dawns to which we are awake. There is more day to dawn. The sun is but a morning star. In Thoreau's words, I find a plea that we awaken to the potential of our own being, that we seek truth versus blind acceptance of dogma and tradition, and that we always, always live with a sense of forward possibility. As you seek to awaken to your own potential and live a life of possibility, Remember your starting point. We are a challenger institution. We are one of the newer schools in the NESCAC. Our doors opened in 1911 to provide women with the rigorous higher education they were being denied elsewhere. We broadened the circle of who and what matters. As Catherine told you about, Professor Goodwin saw a threat to biodiversity in the 1940s and early 50s. And as a result, he took action. He helped found the Nature Conservancy and twice served as its president, an organization that now has set aside 125 million acres simply for life to live on its own terms. We broadened the circle of who and what matters. Countless graduates have gone on from Connecticut College not to accept the world as it is, but to strive toward that to which we can make it. You are part of this challenger institution and part of a generation that is marching, pushing, and demanding change. Keep challenging, keep broadening the circle of who and what matters. And free of limitation, reach deep into the beauty of your heart and fill the blank canvas that awaits you today with your own special story. Thank you, class of 2021.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you so much for that story and for your inspiring work, really. Let's give it up one more time for our amazing graduate of the class of 1994. And just in case you didn't know, Justin also plays basketball. So, it is now time to present the class of 2021. So I am going to invite Dean Singer to come forward once again, and this time he will be presenting the candidates for the Bachelor of Arts degree.